It's a stunning moment to realize that someone you were just talking to is dead. I found out about Jon's death on Christmas Eve. It's a short time I've known Jon, the 9 months from spring equinox to winter solstice. What you're about to watch is an interview I had with Jon this summer. But first I want to share a few thoughts on my friendship with Jon. He was a force of nature. It was obvious from the moment I met him that he was his own person. Confident. He had a plan, and he was moving forward, and he wasn't seeking approval from anyone. There were a lot of things that Jon did that defied reason, like how he shifted gears in his van by reaching down through a hole he had cut in the floor and grabbing some mechanism of the clutch directly with his big, meaty hand. He rolled to a stop in my driveway one day, and a few wrenches and a can of WD-40 fell out of the hole and onto the gravel. Jon didn't miss a beat hopping out of his van and collecting his things. He was proud of the solution that had saved him $200. I liked to give him crap whenever I could to tell him to fix the hole in his van. It seemed like a parable for his life. It's a shame that Jon died in this moment. He was on an upward trend. He was taking responsibility for his life, working and investing in improving his situation. I know he valued my friendship. He would text me to share accomplishments and realizations that he'd had. For my part, I'm grateful to have known him for this time. I think it was important to both of us, and I'd like to think maybe we'll journey again together in some other lifetime. My friends and I always used to say Jon would be the first person we'd call if civilization truly broke down. We'd be in Jon's world at that point, where instinct, ingenuity, and raw strength might save your life. Sometimes it seems like the essence of a person never goes away, that the gift of friendship transcends lifetimes. With that, I'll share with you this interview I had with Jon over the summer. Whatever you think of Jon, I know you'll learn something. May the dude rest in peace.
The more of the stuff I did, like the more pine sap I ate, I was eating a golf ball sized thing of pine sap every day off a tree. I mean, this tree was just like, I called it my giving tree. It gave me pine sap every day, just this huge balls of it, because the whole outside was just a crust of pine sap. And that turpentine in there was killing parasites and killing disease in my body and everything like that. So, I mean, I think that was helping as well. It was going in there and killing shit. Plus you have like the berberine and northern grapefruit and, the OSHA, the massive amounts of OSHA I was just eating and drinking the tea. And out there is where I really learned about making these plant medicines. And you're not making a tea that's like, ooh, I'm sipping this tea and this is good. You're making a fucking syrup. If you want to decoct some real serious fucking plant medicine, dude, and you're doing these root teas and shit, you need to brew that shit up, decoct that down so it's kind of a syrup, and then you're going to get a load that's going to work. I mean, I would feel my lymph system let go. Like you could feel stuff start moving through you because you ain't got nothing else going on.
Hey, Jon.
Hey, dude.
Thanks for coming on today. Really excited to just have you on today and hear more about your story. You remember we met at a coffee shop here in town a couple months ago?
Yeah, a while ago actually.
Yeah. Was that about a year ago?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And what's changed in your life since then? You're spending a lot more time on the Front Range, right?
My life changes a lot though. I mean, it's adaptable. My life is adaptable because it's not, like set grounded into like this community or this place or that place or by this definition, I'm not going to a job every day. I'm just out there hustling myself, so I could hustle repair work on houses, appliances, whatever. I'm doing car mechanics right now, which is making me the most money. So I'm really into it. I like it a lot. So it's really cool to get into and, build a business doing it and getting paid well and having different clients, but meeting a lot of different kinds of people and bringing back the quote unquote family mechanic vibe, that the people know their mechanic, they know his name, they know how, who he is, and, how he lives, and all kinds of stuff, and they invite me in for dinner and all kinds of, I'm really just part of the family now in a lot of my clients' lives. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing, but I mean, I've always just done that.
So I met you in the coffee shop, mm-hmm. and you had quite a story to tell. You had lived in the wilderness, and you'd killed a bear and eaten it. And I was looking at you sitting there and saying a lot of stuff matter of fact, and I was like, this guy seems interesting to me. He has lived life in a way that doesn't follow any template, any storyline that I recognize. And I'm just curious whenever I meet somebody who's coming from a different perspective, I'm like, wow, I can learn something from that person. Do you want to go back to why were you living out in the wilderness in the first place?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why. I've always had this, just like people talk about the calling or whatever. I've always had this picture of me being out in the woods. I mean, when I was a little kid, I played in the Grove all the time and built forts, and I always dreamed of just living out there and being like, I'll fish in the creek and catch chubs and eat them or whatever. I don't know if I ever ate chubs. We ate bullhead tails, though. And I was like, I'll trap raccoons and I'll do this. And I was just this little kid thinking all this stuff. And all of a sudden life fell up, 30-some years later, life fell apart. I was very sick. It was miserable with life. I mean, just couldn't win, for trying. Plus, I was just making horrible decisions on top of everything, of just multitudes of horrible decisions in like small time frames. Really fucked a lot of shit up. And it's like, well, that's another thing, And after a while, you just kind of just sit there and watch the ship go down, like, woo, look at her go, fuck it, because it's just whatever, man, can't do anything. And I started living outside because something just to tell me to do that. I started living nomadic for a while, and living outside, and then
were you in Colorado at that time?
No, I was in Iowa. Northwest Iowa, yeah, in Okanokoboji area. So I started camping at the national or the state park campgrounds. You could buy a tent pass, which was like $7 a day or something like that. You could buy a I don't know. It was really actually reasonable to be able to tent camp in the state park. And then you're fishing and doing everything and just whatever. And then I found out you could just live out in the we call it
the Forest Service areas.
No, it's different out there. Iowa doesn't really have forest. It's public hunting. So it's like a treed area that they plant and kill. And they planted corn for deer and birds and stuff to eat or whatnot. And I found out you could just be out there. I followed all the rules. I looked it all up and I said, okay. So I went and started doing that. Well, then I got harassed by a cop, and the funny thing was I still owned a couple of houses, and the cop was the chief of police for the Milford Police Department, and the mayor's daughter was my tenant. So I told her, hey, man, can you get your dad to get this dude off my back? I'm just literally, and he's trying to call me this bum, and I'm like, I got 30 fucking grand cash in here, and I own 2 houses and 200 acres of land. Fuck you. I'm just living in a tent. I don't care. And then the game wardens and those guys came out and they ran the cop off and they said, well, technically, John, you can do what you're doing, but you need to be over here more. I'm like, oh, so we went over the what I need to actually be doing. And they're like, we would appreciate it if you got all your hunting licenses and your tags. And I said, okay. So I went down to the place and I bought all my permits and I bought everything I needed. I had my fishing license.
Yeah.
And so then when I bought all that, they thought it was really interesting. And then I got my canvas tent with a wood burning stove. Man, that was moving up in the world. That was pretty nice, because it was winter in Iowa and it was negative 20 degrees, and fucking cold. A little tarp pitched up and all this stuff, trying to stay warm by a fire and all this weird shit.
Right.
Just looking very odd to people too.
Yeah.
And but
a lot of people haven't experienced that, like getting outside of the comfort of having a home to go to all the time.
Well, I tell you, I had whole houses I lived in, and I didn't even have furniture in the damn things because I had a bed and a desk chair, you know, because you bought a house because you're supposed to buy, you buy the house so you don't have to deal with landlords, you know. So you just go buy something to exist in. That I had 2 dogs, so I had big backyards, you know, that they could run around in and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's part of the program. I did things of the, you know, the quote unquote programming of society. I did things just to, you know, like fit in sometimes, so you wouldn't be just standing out. So, and then I just didn't give a fuck anyway, so it never really mattered. You know, you can dress me up as much as you want, but I'm going to speak eventually.
So at what point did you come out to Colorado?
Well, after a couple of years, I was trying to figure out where to go, and I was going to do Alaska or Colorado. And I had this bike built by this custom bicycle company called Blue Bicycles. They were in Fort Collins. And I was also thinking of a different place too, but I didn't go there.
Motorized or just a bicycle?
Bike. It's a pedal bike. And I was a big cyclist, you know. So I chose Colorado, and I got on the train and loaded up my bike and the dog trailer and everything, and got buggers on the train, and we got a private car bed. I mean, it was like $200. I'm like, yeah, you know, I still had money, you know, because I went without money for a few years there, living on the street. Well, we lived well yet, but either way. And then I came into Denver over the night from Omaha to Denver, and got off and put my bicycle and everything all together right there in Grand Central Station, and I was here. The boats were burned. You know, there was no going back. But I had one house left to sell. And it was sold. I was just waiting to get paid for it.
So you mentioned you had health issues, and that was part of why you were living this way to begin with, right?
Yeah. It was lymphoblastic leukemia cancer.
Leukemia.
Lymphoblastic leukemia.
Okay.
It's one of those Roundup ones that you can go get paid for now.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, we bathed in Roundup when we were children.
Okay.
On the farm.
Okay.
So, I mean, yeah. I mean, like the neighbor girl went in for poisoning. This is like when we first started really using Roundup. The neighbor girl went in for poisoning, and they couldn't figure out what poisoned her. And now she has all these lymph problems. Guaranteed it's from that bean rider they had, that when we used it, you'd soak you in, that we put a purple dye in the Roundup in the spray tank so you could see where you sprayed the plants. Otherwise it was clear. And you looked like Barney the dinosaur when you got done using that thing, because they were leaking all over the place. So we were just bathing, literally just being soaked in Roundup.
Was that one of those machines you drive and it's got the big tank on it?
No, this is called a bean rider. So we used to walk beans, where we walked down the rows, you know, half mile up, half mile back, and you took anywhere from 2 to 6 rows on your sides, 3 or 2, 4, you know, whatever. And you were responsible for pulling every weed in that row. And Grandpa, you know, he didn't believe in hoeing. So he said, you pull them and you shake the dirt out and you lay it on top of the row so it dies. Otherwise it's going to be back in there and you'll be back out here. He wasn't fucking kidding. He would make you go out there. Whatever. He could see weeds from a mile away. I don't know how the hell he see that shit, but that man could see them. And, you know, then you got the bean rider, which was a boom that rode on the front of a tractor, and you ran a PTO pump to it, and then that had a little tank with Roundup in it, and you had basically they were power washer guns, because they didn't really have hand spray guns back in the 80s like that. You know, they didn't develop yet really. So you had power washer guns, and all this stuff was all homemade and wired, you know, hose clamped together and just leaking everywhere. And you rode on this chair, and you were responsible for spraying this many weeds.
Okay.
You know, and then that killed the weeds instead of.
It was a handheld thing, but it's just spraying.
You rode on the front of a tractor though.
Yeah.
So there'd be 4 of you.
Yeah.
But we didn't have that. So my uncle would drive, and then he'd have the boom up, and it would just drip on me all day. And then I'd just ride there and spray the weeds as we drove through the field. And you just get covered in that shit.
Yeah. So tell me again, it was leukemia. Tell me the form.
Lymphoblastic.
Lymphoblastic.
Is what they call it.
So that sounds pretty much like a death sentence is the medical diagnosis you received, right?
Well, yeah, 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, I don't know how I was running around, dude, and I was in another world. I was I was just alive on like adrenaline or just the fact of trying to stay alive, running around out here like 165 pounds.
So you got a 3 to 6 month diagnosis, and what was the realization that you had that you needed to do?
Oh, I really, it was just kind of like, well, I guess it's over with, type thing. But then I was like, I'm going to go live the life I always wanted to live. I'm going to, the fucks are gone, and I'm just going to go off and do whatever. I'm just going to go do what I want. And the idea was your legacy type situation, of like, what are you leaving behind? And it's like, I kind of wanted to change my story to something different, to something really good and stuff. So I set out to do all this stuff to leave something behind. And I had to go through a lot of learning situations before I could even come back to even doing that and making that work. Like, as I look back 10 years ago now, I was like, there's fucking no way I would have been able to make that work back then. Not with the way I was. I mean, I would have put something together, but it would have killed me. It would have been everything I had, to do or whatnot. But then, now I look at it of how I can put that together. I learned a lot of stuff in the last 10 years of how to actually make something like what I was trying to do work,
And do you mean like trade skills? Do you mean like people skills and running a business?
I mean, just like everything, just like how to get, community building, if you want to put a quote to it, like how to actually set the thing up so that it can succeed, versus, well, we're just going to get these people together and do this thing. Yeah, fuck that. That don't fucking work, man. There's rubble of failure like that all over this fucking place, man, in Paonia. Just ruins of failure of that idea all over Paonia with a bunch of people. It's terrible.
So you're in this moment when, again, you had this, as far as you knew, 3 to 6 months to live. And, you had a realization that you wanted to, do something positive. You wanted to leave a legacy. How did that turn into, I'm going to go out into the wilderness?
Well, I had Boogers, my dog. And Boogers was my partner. And I looked at Boogers and said, well, fuck this 3 to 6 months. I think we can beat this. I think we can get on top of it. Because I started actually doing natural medicines. I started actually like studying different, plants and stuff. And what's the basic shit? Well, you're out there eating fucking dandelions. And, what's the first thing you do is stop poisoning yourself. So we give up all this shit that, drinking and eating all the crap food and all this other stuff, and get rid of all that shit that's poisoning you. And you start getting really actually, I got really, I got real weird about things, about like learning about what's in this water that I'm drinking, because I was at a point where I was so sick one time that like I would shower and I had infection all over myself, and I would turn yellow from the chlorine and all the shit in the water because my liver couldn't process it. Okay. My liver was so backed up, I would jaundice out from just regular
taking
toxins.
A shower.
Yeah. I mean, this is at the time my hair was falling out just by itself because it couldn't even sustain healthy hair growth anymore. My fingernails were starting to come out. I was dying.
Yeah.
I had infections and gangrene on me and smelled. It was terrible. And I'd sit there and I learned how to start treating infections, that way. And I treated them naturally. And I sat there and, basically looked myself in the eye, and I said, all right, let's dance, motherfucker. It's going to be me and you. We're going to get this on. We're going to fight this. And I set my mind to it. I started learning all kinds of stuff. And then I would purposely fuck with shit and then treat it with something just to see what it would do, And it's like the lady with my hand right now.
So you lost fear. You lost fear of
fucks. You lose
death
fucks.
And of pain and of your body experiencing different things.
Yeah. Basically,
And it started to be an experiment.
Well, once you accept your mortality, like I'm fucking dying here. And I've been through a lot of different shit and should have been dead a million fucking times, and not there. But this was the closest time where I felt like I'm fucking dying right now. Like my shit's just going away, and I had to just go, well, this is it. I mean, accept it.
So you're starting to learn about toxins. What's toxic in your environment? How do I avoid that? you're starting to learn about herbs and, what's going to be naturally healing, what's going to actually start to cleanse whatever's in my system, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the biggest problems was I was doing mold remediation and I was in the place that the mold was at. So I was just sucking in mold all the time. And that's what was killing me the most.
You were doing mold remediation as a job?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Like my company was, and it was bad.
Yeah.
I was really sick from that. I mean, that took me down, have someone whose lymphatic system isn't working real well. And then all of a sudden now we're in all these moldy environments, breathing all that shit in. It's on you all the time. That's why I was always just on the verge all the time. It was just shutting me down. That's when I started living outside. It's like, I got to just live outside, and then that became a thing, and, it was just a really, really interesting time of, I'm just going to go out here and live in these fucking woods. And then in the spring I came out and, we went to start a farm and that fell apart and, I ended up in Colorado. I just bought a ticket and I was gone, man. I was on the train with my bike and the dog and had it all together. And then I started riding to Fort Collins to go meet the people who built the bike.
All right. And what got that in your head? You're going to go meet the guy who built this bike.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they were in Fort Collins and, I always wanted to live in the mountains and in forests, and Colorado has the most, national forest camping wilderness area you can get to in the lower 48. So you can just go disappear out there. I mean, that was the thing. It was just trying to get out to the woods and learning how to be in the woods, learning primitive skills, which I was learning, practicing the whole time when I was in Iowa in the public hunting and, just preparing for it basically. And then I rode north all the way to Fort Collins. I mean, Boogers and I were camping out everywhere. And, we were trying to hide. And then I realized after a while, people don't fucking hide when they're camping on Sundays. They just go right there. It's just like a thing here, but we were trying to be evasive and stuff and everything, just not be seen and things. And then we got to Fort Collins and, the wheels were broken on my bike. I got to the bike shop and they said, dude, your wheels are broken. Well, I had a flat tire actually. Mm-hmm. And man, that's a long story, dude. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of different, this one little trip just from Denver to Fort Collins was an adventure every day, And, I got the old dude who owned the old bike shop in Okoboji where I spent a lot of money, owned one down here, and they actually got me a tire because I blew a tire. And then I eventually made it to Fort Collins and I made it to the bike shop and they said, well, your rims are broken. I'm like, those are $3,000 fucking bucks. I got $200, a bag of rice, a bag of beans, and my dog. And the company warranted them. He's like, I can't believe they fucking warranty that. And I was like, well, they did. Fucking give me new wheels. So he laced me up a set of wheels so I could keep riding. And I ended up just going different places and seeing what's going on. And then I found this one spot and met up with these kids that were garden kids. They were working on all these different CSAs and shit. Mm-hmm. And so we would go and volunteer. We'd be living in the, in the trees in the park and everything like that.
Was that here in this area?
Fort Collins.
Oh, Fort Collins.
Mm-hmm. So we'd be living up in there, hiding out and whatever. I didn't run around with all the other homeless people. I was just riding my bike around, just living free, I guess. And we'd be working on these CSA farms on volunteer days or whatever, just at night or whenever. And we get bags of vegetables, and then we're all studying wild plants and edibles and mushrooms and everything, going foraging all the time for berries and shit around town and dumpster diving. Mm-hmm. So that was interesting. And, Dutches ate meat every fucking day. But you can also go to the Little Caesars and knock on the door and they'll hand you a warm pizza because they clear off the buffet. Mm-hmm. So that's who we were. Is we ran around and we did organic farming and we set up gardens in different spots and did all kind and learned foraging. And a couple of these kids they taught wild foraging classes and stuff. And eventually the bike shop's like, hey, where are you living? I'm like, well, I just kind of camp out whenever and I'd pack it all up and come back in. So they said, well, hey man, we'll give you a job. You can live back in the warehouse and we'll give you cost on bicycle stuff. And yeah. So that was an interesting thing. I'd do a bunch of work around there and then I'd order bicycle parts and then I'd take the bike out and get it dropped off in the up in the forest and I'd go live out there for 30 days at a time, go camping and whatever. And we'd do a bunch of foraging and living out there and practicing skills.
So you kind of built up rapport with people just by doing things, right? You're all seen as somebody who's working on something, who's curious, who's exploring.
Well, what I did is I found bars. I had some money, so I went to a brewery and got talking to the bartender. I was like, yeah, this is what I'm doing, because it's an interesting deal. You're rolling in there with a service animal and bicycle, but Boogers is the most well-behaved frickin' dog ever. She was well-trained, and so they're going to ask you some questions about what's going on, and you tell them, like, man, I fucking came here from Iowa, I'm riding this bicycle around. I'm into this thing, in sustainable farming systems and foraging. And he's like, well, you got to go to this place. You got to go to the Foco Cafe. You'll meet your people there. Mm-hmm. And I went to the Foco Cafe, and I was told I was looking for some kid named Nick, and finally he came in and we sat down, we had dinner, and next thing you know, man, we ran around that for a couple of years in Fort Collins doing all kinds of stuff, Mm-hmm. And yeah, he's out right now. He teaches wilderness stuff. So, but that's where we learned a lot of foraging from. Mm-hmm. What are the plants? But really, where you learned it from is you buy this book and then you just walk around the forest and you find something and you look for it until you see it.
So then at some point you got out into the West Elk wilderness range. And how long did you live out there?
Well, I got into the West Elks and I lived out there for 6 months. Uh-huh. And but I had two different spots. I had the deep one, and then I had the one that was close to town here in Paonia. It was a 3-hour hike from downtown, but you were in the national forest. And I had a work camp, that was what I called it. And so when I would be coming back and stuff like that, I stayed at that a lot, because I'd be coming back and forth, and I'd be working for someone in town or at some farm or something like that, and then I could come in and out of town easier, mm-hmm. But you have them times when you just got to get back out way deep and get away. And the first time it was, I had warrants. Like, I was a wanted fucking criminal for a little bit there as running weed across South Dakota, and I bailed out and never went back. And that charge eventually went away because they legalized marijuana in South Dakota. Mm-hmm. So that's gone now. Mm-hmm. So that's good. But, I was like, I got to diss a fucking pier for a little while,
Was that what brought you out into the West Elks?
That's what brought me deeper into the wilderness.
Whatever happened with the leukemia? At what point?
Well, I was just sick.
I'm kind of bounced around here a little bit.
Well, the thing about it is I was just sick all the time. I could hardly keep weight on. Every once in a while, I would just be ill.
So through this whole period, you still had.
I was still sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even when you went out into the West Elks, like you were still like, that was your constant companion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was still sick. I didn't really even start getting on top of it until I went out there, mm-hmm. And, when you're living out there, you're just eating all this. Everything out there is like almost medicinal. Mm-hmm. The book, 100 Edible Medicinal Plants of the Southern Rockies is a great book. There's so many different uses for a lot of the plants, and these women, they go over it, and in the book, they go over like all the different ways that, how it was used here, how it's used now, how it's used by the natives, how it's used from the natives in Europe, if it's from Europe, how the natives used a European plant different than the way the Europeans did. How we use it now, like what are the properties of these plants and how are they effective? And you learn all the anti-cancer and lymphatic plants are out there, man. Anti-inflammatory, but I was also eating, man, it was rough too, but I was eating ceremonial doses of San Pedro powdered cactus every day, okay. Which was alkalizing my body so hard and so fast, it was killing shit inside of it too. Uh-huh. And that's why you go through throwing up and you go through the shits and everything for days, But, boy, you start getting out there too.
So you were getting up in the morning and eating psychedelic cactus. Yeah,
you'd get up. Time is kind of difficult to figure out because I didn't have anything that kept time. I'd wake up when the birds would start chirping before blue sky. Because because they know the sun's going to start coming up and they start singing before the blue sky happens, And then you get the fire going, or you're just naturally up, whatever. And you get the fire going, and I boil my tea, and I would take my medicines first thing in the morning, and then I'd sit for a little while and do my, if you want to call it meditation or whatever. And then I would go through stretches and stuff when I'd feel the medicine starting to like kick in, and I'd go through various different stretches and movements and warm-ups. And then I would sometimes I would lay in the cold water, or sometimes I wouldn't, I did all kinds of weird things when I was tripping. Man, I was like, how do I develop balance in my life? So I would do acts of balancing, and I'd be standing on a log above the water and standing on one foot and just like moving my body around of like, bringing my physical life into my, or, whatever's going on in my mental life into my physical life of I need to develop balance into this life. So I'm going to actually just do balancing stuff, and then I would go on my trail, and me and Boogers, my dog, we had various different stops we would stop at that had different water, and there'd be different plants growing at each one, but I would pick a bunch of yarrow and various other, stuff that was around and make a tea, filter some water and make a tea. And then she could sit and drink, and, Boogers could cool off too and rest. And we'd sit there, for a little while and think about things, and then move on to the next stop. And eventually the highest spot was, we'd be tripping pretty hard. I would be tripping really hard. I don't know what Boogers was, but I'd be tripping pretty hard by this time. And, I'm really in my head, and I'm like just really getting deep down with some stuff, because you're just sitting there walking in silence constantly every day on heavy psychedelics, going through these little stopping places. And I get to 9,000 feet, there's this emerald green pond. And then at that point, because of all the alkalization that's been going on in my body from the cactus, I would pack all the like dirt and mud from the edge of the pond onto my whole body. I'd be naked, and then I'd sit out to be about what I figured about noon, because the sun is straight up in the air, And I would let that hit me, and then it would cake all that mud onto you and burn, not burn, but dry it. And then that would suck all the toxins out of your skin. So if you had overloaded lymph, it would detox you that way, and then I'd go swim in the pond and rinse it off. And then on the way home, we'd collect berries and check traps and whatever else and gather specimens to eat, and make all the little stops on the way home, and then get home and eat food and do whatever you want,
So you're eating like, what?
Well, a lot of fucking chipmunks.
Small animals.
A lot of chipmunks. You eat a lot of chipmunks out there. I got a grouse once. Basically a really stupid bird. Not hard. It's pretty easy to figure out why they don't really exist in high numbers anymore. They weren't hard to get. But, a lot of chipmunks. Eat a lot of chipmunks, like rock squirrels. Got a bird once in the trap. That was interesting. It went after something shiny. So that was neat to get a bird, but that way. But, fish, trout. Eventually, got the bear. It came through and destroyed my camp. And when I was gone on the hike, so the next day I waited for it and shot it with the bow. I had a Hoyt buffalo takedown, about 60. They figured it was about 65 pounds, full draw. And I shot it from about 10 feet away, went right through, clean kill. Bear walked ahead about 10 feet, dropped, and then I skinned it. But I was well into my into the psychedelics by this time, and I had studied a lot of different things about what ancient tribes believed about, taking on the spirit of the animal and everything. So I took a big old bite out of the liver after I killed it, and the first thing I did was take that liver out and took a bite, and I said, I am ingesting the spirit of the animal, because they believe that your soul lives in the liver, and that's why they would eat the liver, to ingest the spirit of what they killed, And then I took a bite of its heart and everything, while it was warm, and and just blood all over me, and I wore its hide around. I fucking ate berries and shit. And then I cut its paws off, and I buried them at the 4 directions, and I buried its head right under there was a place where, like, the gathering area thing was, or whatever, like the main area, and it was a circle of oak trees at the top of this mound, and I buried its head right underneath there. And that's where we had the little pitch tent or whatever, and then, so it protected us.
You and Boogers.
Me and Boogers.
Yeah.
Stories. But,
So how much longer were you in the West Elks after that?
Oh, I don't even know, man. I was just kind of going by the moons. It was a couple months.
Yeah.
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 But then I had bear, you know.
Oh,
And
sure. You had a food source.
And it wasn't like this giant grizzly bear. It was like a second-year cub or something like that. So, I mean, it was maybe, I can't even tell you how much meat. I mean, it weighed 100 pounds maybe by itself, but it was plenty of food for us for a while because we weren't living on much. A lot of grubs and ants, too. They're neat to eat. Yeah, I had a lot of salt, so I salted and smoked the bear. And then where that camp was, there was a freshwater spring that was freezing cold. And I had brought some stuff out there as for container-wise, so I was able to put the meat into the containers and keep them in that freezing cold after they've been salted and smoked. And then I would just take them out and I would put them in the stew. Mm-hmm. So I just had to take it I took this one, right away I took one of them hindquarter legs and I stuck that right in the big old pot, and it just sat on the fire for weeks. The bone sat out there, and I would eat a size of meat about the size of my hand every night. But there was inches of fat on top of that. And then you would drink that broth, I'd throw mushrooms and all different kinds of plants and stuff into that broth, you know, nettles, dandelions, Oregon grapefruit, lots of different kinds of polypores off of the trees. They're supposed to be, none of them are poisonous, and they're supposed to be medicinal. Well,
none of the polypores are poisonous?
Well, I shouldn't say none of them are poisonous. They're all supposed to have some kind of medicinal thing, the ones that I was looking at. I don't give mushroom advice. I tell people to go figure that out yourself.
Do their own research.
You need to get the book and get the spore prints.
Yep.
Yeah, because there ain't much mushrooms around here. I mean, there's the LBM, the little brown ones, and I'm not even messing with them. I got chipmunks and trout, you know. So I mean, there was just and we didn't stop trapping. I mean, it was still, you know, eating chipmunks and trout and throwing them into the soup. It was not a very good tasting soup. But I also made biscuits.
Did you have some like rice or beans that you'd brought out there?
No, I made my own flour from opening pine cones and picking all the seeds out.
Okay.
And at one time I had I made a mortar and pestle. Mm-hmm. It still got kind of rocks and stuff, but I spent several months just grinding these stones together until they were pretty smooth. Mm-hmm. And then you could grind them rocks and seeds, and you could get yellow dock seeds, and then you could get the pine seeds. And you could, in the springtime, you could grab the little baby thistles when they're all fuzzy, and you can dry them out and grind those up for flour too. If you really wanted to, you could char the inside of a pine bark or tree and turn that into it. It's not very good though. But yeah, you take that, and then you can take mallow, and you can soak the mallow in water, and then it'll coagulate, and it'll give off this like snot, you know, this coagulation stuff that's in, you know, the mucilage.
Yep.
Right. You can also get some of that from cacti. So I was eating like a lot of, what do they call them? Cactus. Shit, I don't even remember what the hell they're called. They're all over the place. The platypus cactus or whatever the fuck they're called.
There's a hedgehog cactus. Nope. There's the prickly pear.
Yeah, prickly pear.
Yeah.
The flowers on those are really sweet too. When they close up and bud, and then you go and pick all the thorns off them and roast them up. Oh, those are sweet. Those are good. Huh. So, and then.
At what phase do you eat the flower? Is it when it's
I eat it when it closed and budded.
Okay, so after it opens, it closes again.
And it's like a berry.
And you grab it.
Yeah, but you can do the leaves. I guess you got to pick all the stuff off. Fire works really good to get the thorns off the cactus. But you can get mucilage out of that too, and then you can mix that with your flour that you're making with a little water. I followed a bee for a while. I mean, like a whole day, and I got back to his hive. And then when it rained one night, I went and got a honeycomb out of that hive. I had a big fur mitt, you know. It's just a big leather mitt with fur on the backside, and I had a mosquito net, so I wore that, and I brought my coffee can with me, and I built a little fire in there and smoked it out, and I just reached in there, and I'm like, I'm just a bear getting a little honey, guys, you know, and grabbed that comb, and then I would mix that little bit of that honey with that flour mix with that coagulant in there, and then put some berries in there, and you could kind of get a little bit of a bread, you know, like a biscuit going.
Okay.
And then you build a south-facing rock oven, and pack that with clay, and then every morning you shut that sucker, and then it'll bake those biscuits in there when you get home. So you got something that you can crumble into the fucking soup, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. It's just completely, you know, otherworldly to me. Like, I've never gone out into the wilderness like that and lived out of my own means. So
I've done it several times on shorter trips before. Mm-hmm. You know, And what I've learned is to take some damn rice with you and everything. But I was like, shit, I don't need to this time. I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, and then eventually I came into the work camp and I started coming into town. And then I dumpster dove. I went into the grocery store and looked when the meat ad was over.
So what year was it when you were
don't ask that.
coming back into town?
No way I even know that stuff. I didn't know what day it was, what time it was. I didn't know what year. I mean, I have no idea how to even look back.
What was different when you left? You left society, you went out into the wilderness, and then you came back. What was that like?
Yeah, you asked me this the other night, and you know, I sat here and thought about it. And it was at the time there was a lot of different kinds of shootings going on at that time, so there was always something new going on like that with the shootings. You know, that was the big deal, and the Donald Trump guy was a big deal with the Hillary Clinton lady. Whenever that was pretty close to that time.
The elections when they were actually competing in
so
the elections.
That would have been like what was 20 an election? Yeah, 2020 was an election.
That was probably 2016. The 2016.
Yeah, it could have been 2016. That could have been about that time. So there was just a lot of different stuff going on all the time, and that's what I mean. Like I would go out and I'd come back, and the whole narrative of what everybody's supposed to be is like different. You know, now you need to be mad at this person about this. And it's like, 30 days ago
was it?
There was a shooting and you were all upset about the shooting.
What was it when you came back?
I don't even remember. I mean, it was the Donald Trump thing was big. The Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton.
That was before.
That was before I went in, actually. See, when I came back, no, the Donald Trump thing was still a deal because I think he was president.
Yeah.
So people were still upset about that.
Yeah. Same guy, different situation.
I'm like, I don't care. I don't care who the president is right now. I live in the fucking woods, you know? And I still don't give a shit who the president is, man. I had to tell someone the other day, I said, I don't give the government that much control over my fucking life that who the president is really fucking matters. You know, it hasn't affected me. I'm still advancing myself. You know, and the president has not affected that. Any of them. The dumb Trump or the dumb whatever this fucking idiot is.
So you come out of the West Elks. Mm-hmm. What's the situation then? What did you
I felt great. I felt good, man.
Well, did you have some kind of like, was there a shifting point with the leukemia where? So
here's the thing.
Was it like night and day, or was it like gradually as you were out there?
The more of the stuff I did, like the more pine sap I ate, I was eating a golf ball sized thing of pine sap every day off a tree. I mean, this tree was just like, I called it my giving tree. It gave me pine sap every day, just this huge balls of it, because the whole outside was just a crust of pine sap. And that turpentine in there was killing parasites and killing disease in my body and everything like that. So, I mean, I think that was helping as well. It was going in there and killing shit. Plus you have like the berberine and northern grapefruit and, you know, the OSHA, the massive amounts of OSHA. I was just eating and drinking the tea. And out there is where I really learned about making these plant medicines. And you're not making a tea that's like, ooh, I'm sipping this tea and this is good. You're making a fucking syrup. If you want to decoct some real serious fucking plant medicine, dude, and you're doing these root teas and shit, you need to brew that shit up, decoct that down so it's kind of a syrup, and then you're going to get a load that's going to work. I mean, I would feel my lymph system let go. Like you could feel stuff start moving through you because you ain't got nothing else going on. You don't have music. You don't have, I mean, I had a drum, but I mean, whatever. But you ain't got radio, TV. You don't have anything out there doing anything to influence you. You're just sitting with yourself for a real long time in silence all the time. You know, you get to know yourself real well. And you know when things are working and stuff, you know. And then when I would take that pine sap, more pains would go away, you know. And when I would take the dandelion syrup, pains would go away, you know. And when I would do the heavy concentrate of rose hips for the huge vitamin C, I would feel better too, you know, because you got to purge that stuff out. And then I'm drinking like 2 gallons of live spring water every day. I mean, bone broth, healing my guts, functioning on all this fat. Everything I got out there is good for me. So I put on like 30 pounds. living in the wilderness.
Now, you weren't boiling water, were you?
No. Well, I would in some of the stops, where it wasn't a fresh spring where it was. I mean, I lived right where it came out of the mountain.
Okay.
Well, I didn't live right on it. It was a little ways away from that. But yeah, right there. It came right out of the mountain. It was fresh.
Uh-huh.
There was no cow shit anywhere. No beavers. Yeah. It was good. It was live water. You could taste the life in that water.
Yeah.
And it's freezing cold.
Yeah.
In the summer, oof.
Okay. Okay, so you come out of the West Elks.
Yep. I was put on 30 pounds. I was like 190 pounds, feeling good, feeling like I can conquer the world.
And at this point, the leukemia, it feels it's mostly resolved at this point. You feel
I felt great.
Healthy?
And people would ask me, they would say, well, how do you know it's gone? I said, I didn't say it's gone. I just said I feel good. And I had years of not feeling good, years of it. Just feeling just terrible, run down, sick, battling all different kinds of weird shit all the time. And then boom, I feel great. I'm putting on weight. My hair's growing, all this stuff. It's just, and I was like, well, that's just time to come back to the world. I just, like Christopher McCandless decided to leave the bus one day, right? The Into the Wild story guy.
Not familiar with him.
Well, just, look it up. I'm not going to explain it.
Yeah.
But he decided to finally come back into the world. He didn't make it. He died. But I got to that point where I was just like, I'm just going to come back to the world, and I was like, I'm going to go, make some money. I gotta get new gear. Got to do this. Got to do that. Stuff like that. And
this was before the pandemic. You came back. It must have been like 2018, 2019, something like that.
Yeah, right at the beginning of the hemp rush. So yeah, I'd say 17 or 19, 18. 18? Yeah, probably 18. I don't know. I can't, that one I don't know. I found an ad of hemp farms hiring, so I went and answered an ad on the hemp farm. And I rolled out there and worked my ass off and actually made my way up through a company that was completely mismanaged by all the people running it. And it failed miserably, but either way, through all that stuff, I was able to acquire a lot of different things. I was able to acquire a vehicle. I was able to acquire new clothes, whatever. I was able to acquire some tools, to start doing my own stuff. And then I started doing my own stuff. And I worked my way from turning some wrenches and selling fruit in the Front Range and hauling fruit over to the Front Range. And selling that on the weekends, and then coming back and turning some wrenches over here and into a full-on business. Now, over 4 years, something like that, where I'm, 2 weeks out, got plenty of steady work, but I still travel over the Front Range to do my work. I don't do the work here.
Everything's relative, it seems to me. A person's perspective of, whether they look highly on themselves or whether they're depressed or upset with life, everything's relative. And so where do you sit now? You're going around in society trying to build yourself up, but you've gone through this whole journey. So how does that change your perspective? I've
had businesses before, and then I operated them in certain ways, but I never operated them like everyone else ever, but it's, now it's just like, I want to live this way, like the way I'm living right now. I'm nomadic, I have a little camper here that I rent and I come back to, but I got the van loaded with the tools and the bed and the living quarters and, just traveling around, making money where money is, and then coming into a slower down pace, peaceful place to relax, and then go back into the battle, And it's like when that's how you live, that's all you got. So you got to show up, you got to do what you got to do. But it's ultimate accountability when you're out living in the woods by yourself, hunting your own food and making your own medicines, and you're sick and dying. You have to have ultimate accountability, because the minute you try to blame someone else, you're fucking dead. Because then you're going to sit there and feel sorry for yourself, and you're not going to do something, and something's going to, you're going to get in your pity party. And there ain't no room for pity parties out there. It's bootstraps and fucking get going. Otherwise, it's overtime for you, you know? You better start watching when that sun goes down because you got to be back by this time. You don't really want to be on the trails at twilight and dusk because of the mountain lions and stuff like that too. And, you know, you got to watch them storms. If there's a storm brewing in, you know, you might want to either get back or try to take shelter somewhere. I've sheltered under quite a few trees and in rock caves and whatever as these things wash through pretty good up on that mountain sometimes. Mm-hmm. So you just have to be extremely accountable. And then when you show up and you start working for other companies and you're extremely accountable, they're like, what the fuck is this thing that's accountable? We've never had anybody be accountable. And then the next thing you're just like managing people and they're fucking up and it's like, well, maybe I'm not communicating with them because I'm ultimately accountable. So I must not be communicating with these people properly. And then I find out you're just fucking idiots. You can't communicate with you because you don't want to. Fucking morons, you know?
Or, yeah, maybe it is the accountability thing and they're just coming from a completely different place.
Well, that's the disease of this country is the complete lack of accountability. I mean, everybody wants to have their scapegoat and they want to have where they lack accountability so they can be the victim because the victim doesn't have to be responsible.
It seems like there's a lot of encouragement in our culture to blame some outside
Look at the goddamn politicians. It is the Democrats. It is the fucking whatever those other fuckers are. You know, it is they're doing this to you. These people are doing this to you. And it's like you're all doing it to us. And then you know they all just that person, this person. No, man, it's where's your accountability? You know, where's our accountability of this is where I'm at in life and I got myself here. And then once you get honest with yourself about this is exactly where I'm at and how you got yourself there, then you know the next step you need to take for real that's going to get you forward. Because if you don't break it down to that and you tell yourself some fucking bullshit ego fucking story so you know because you want to hide from some cognitive dissonance you got going on in your head about some bullshit you got yourself into, then you're there. Then you're in that bullshit story. And that's all your life is this bullshit fucking story because you had no foundation on what you built it off of. So you have to keep putting all this energy in to have this bullshit fucking story and it gets tiring. When you're honest with yourself about where you're at and you're going to rebuild yourself and move forward, you know exactly what you need to be doing. Because you know what your next step is because it's right now. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's I got to drink fucking water. Sometimes I better brush my teeth because I haven't done that this morning yet for 3 hours. Sometimes it's I better go to sleep right now because I have a big day tomorrow and I got to get up and perform. So I need my brain sometimes, you know, whatever. It's what's my next step of my ultimate goal. And a lot of times, like when I find out what my ideas and dreams and visions and whatever of my ultimate goals is, the shit I'm doing now doesn't really have a whole lot to do with the ultimate goal. You know, it's just what I need to do now to move myself through this part of my life. But it's building onto that ultimate goal yet.
So it seems like one of the things that this whole experience would do is it gets you focused on dealing with what's immediate and being more in action rather than being in a planning or
You got a plan. I mean, if you're going to be out there for a long time, you got to be figuring out where your willows are and your nettles are to be making cordage, you know, because you're going to need to harvest that stuff at certain times of the year. You know, you're going to need firewood put away. You're going to need that winter shelter put up. You know, you're going to need those routes. You're going to need to make sure that you gathered enough food through the winter to make it. You know, that you've put enough away. There is planning involved in it, but in the time when you're just basically fighting, you know, you're Walking Dead man or whatever, Walking Dead person, it right now is all you got. You know, so I was very in the moment.
Yeah. I was watching a video a couple of weeks ago now, and it was talking about how it's possible for a person to use planning as a way of like fantasizing, and actually they're not dealing with the pain of the present moment, and they're using getting
they live in their future dream world of what they want their world to become, but they're not willing to admit where they're at right now to get there.
Yeah, so there's a distinction between planning that is active, that's directed at something that has a purpose that you're going to follow through on, and you're doing the necessary amount of planning to facilitate that, and something that's really just like a fantasy and a getaway, like something that distracts you from dealing with the present moment. And it just seems like what you just said out there in the wilderness, like there is no room for that kind of distraction that's actually pulling your energy away from the core things that you need to focus on.
Well, the planning out there is a lot different than the planning in this world. I mean, there's so much crap you got to do every day just so you can walk out the fucking door and not get arrested. Am I dressed? Yes. Okay, good. I'm not going to get arrested because I put clothes on. In the wilderness, it doesn't matter. They can't do anything to you even if they find you, because it's not illegal to be naked in the wilderness or the national forest.
Mm-hmm.
So when you come here and you're back into the world, now it's, well, how do I acquire my food? How do I do this? How do I do that? And then, where is the good food, and how do I go around building my life to be able to afford this kind of food? And you work on the farms, which is low pay, but you're getting the good food. So you're feeding yourself well, and you're surrounding yourself with that kind of energy anyway of producing and eating good food. But then it's like, well, I want to get ahead in the world. Around here, the labor force is, you're here to make sure we get ahead. The people who have the businesses or whatever, the labor, the way the ideal around here seems to operate is, you're only here to serve us so that we can get ahead. We aren't going to make it worthwhile to you so you can get ahead, and so eventually you have to get away from that,
Yeah, you're not gonna probably get ahead as a farm worker.
No, you're not going to get ahead as a farm worker. And so, and the weed market's done. So, there ain't no quick money in growing, 10 pounds of weed and fucking making a bunch of money or anything like that anymore. And it's like, well, all right, well, what are your skills and talents and abilities? What do you have for resources, and how can you make money doing this? So I just gather around and go, well, this is what I can do here. And I make a little hustle over here. So I'll throw some I'll make some CBD oils or whatever. Or I'll make some good chocolates, some mushroom chocolate, and hustle those things for a little while.
So what do you think about the psychedelic world right now? And like, we can see that's going to be legalized in Colorado at the end of 2024. And people have these different ayahuasca retreats, and it's kind of become a big thing.
Yeah, it's basically just become a bunch of bullshit to me. I mean, it's like I'm going to do this now. I mean, there's all these people. I do microdosing, and I'm like, you don't even know what that shit's doing in your brain. You don't even know how it's operating. There is enough information out there right now that people can't even deny. Everybody wants to say, I run my own program. Yeah, no, you don't. All you're doing is they're just hypnotizing themselves and telling themselves shit over and over again until they believe it, and now it's some fucking bullshit that they think.
In terms of the people who are running retreats?
No, I'm talking about people taking the medicines. They don't know what's really going on. They don't know how susceptible they are to programming while they're on these psychedelics.
Yeah.
Then so they don't understand that all they're doing is fucking hypnotizing themselves and fucking telling themselves some bullshit. And then thinking that's what they are. And
then baking it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically. And then it's really hard to get them to grasp reality after that, of like, look, you're not doing that. And then plus with the social media bullshit out there now. So now you get them doing that and then going and being their character on the social media, but it's not really what they're fucking doing. They haven't done anything. They just said they did. So all they did was just program themselves into some shit, and well, whatever.
So what's different about that versus what you did, being out in the West Elks and consuming massive amounts of psychedelics?
Well, a lot of the people that I know that are doing this programming thing, they're not taking massive amounts for a long time sitting by themselves, really just getting down with themselves. Like one of my mottos when I was out there was, if you're going to get, if you're ready to change yourself, you better start get used to being uncomfortable. So I would sleep on side hills and shit like that. So I would sleep uncomfortable to get used to being uncomfortable, because then you can start dealing with the demons of yourself.
Mm.
And most of the people I run into haven't dealt with that. They don't want to go like that. You know, they want to change into this better person, but they don't want to look at who they are and why they're choosing. You know, the backside of who they don't want to be and why they're that person. You know, and they're not taking the time to actually go for it. You know, they're not sitting by themselves for months on end eating massive amounts of this stuff.
Well, also, I would say scientifically, what we use the word neuroplasticity, right?
Right.
Like that's what these psychedelics are doing, increasing neuroplasticity. So that's increasing your ability to be imprinted by whatever you're experiencing, which can be positive in the sense of your
you can train yourself in new habits easier. That's the basic layman term of it. You can brainwash yourself into thinking things, but you can train yourself into developing new habits.
Well, it can be positive in the sense that, like, if your life has shifted in a way that you've been rigid and you haven't really adapted your thinking and your internal model to account for the way life is now, right? The psychedelics can actually help you to acclimate to present day reality. But like you say, the danger is if you're acclimating to something that is also false and is illusionary, well, then that's the pattern you're carrying forward. What you did out in the wilderness, you're patterning the experience of being out in nature and living as yourself there in nature, right? And that's the program that's now, imprinting itself on you.
Well, my deal was getting down with myself, getting at peace with myself, getting truthful with myself of everything and all the stuff that, going through with life, over the past however many years I was alive at those times, and dealing with those old traumas, but being able to really be outside the box and watching those situations play over again and going, well, yeah, this is why this was going on, and having the understanding of what's happening, And I think that's what consciousness a lot of times is just having understandings of what's going on, having an understanding of what the energy's out there. When you sit out there long enough and you get down with your own energy, you can read other people's energy pretty good, especially when you get down with your dirt shit. When you get down with your demons and all your darkness and everything else, you can sniff that shit out on a motherfucker real easy when you come back. It ain't too hard. It's like that person comes up to you. I sample whatever their energy is, and I go, okay, I know who you are. Mm-hmm. And then I choose to deal with you or not. A lot of times I just kind of humor it just to see how fucked up, your psychology is, or your psyche.
Most people aren't a real threat just from an encounter, but it's the way you interact with them, right? You can fall into patterns with them.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing I've had to deal with since I've come out of the woods is dealing with everybody else's fears and me having to have them.
Okay.
They want you to have their fucking bullshit, somehow. They have some bullshit and you're not giving power to it. So you need to have it, and they will jump up and down and scream and throw a little fucking fit. And there's other people have figured out how to bully people in many ways. The victim state bullying, where they will hold some kind of a victim state because they're just a worthless and weak being, period. So they're sucking into lower weak energies. So they're going to take the victim line. And here's where I'm a victim and you're existing over there in that way. And now you're my bully. I got my idea of what I want to do with my life. And the only thing I need to do that deals with other people is I need to be aware of, like when you pull into a town or whatever like that, it's like, what is the culture of this town? How are these people? You don't talk about religion, politics, or money. Stay away from those subjects. You can listen to everybody talk about it, and then you can take all the little notes, of this person. Okay, this is this way. So you know how to interact with these people and stuff. Because it isn't about taking from them. It's about, well, this is how this person is. Do I want to do any kind of interaction, or do I want to, approach this person to become a potential mechanic, a client for me or anything like that? And so you gotta understand what's going on, and I'm not out there kissing anybody's ass to try and become their mechanic. Fuck that. Jesus. Cause then that's all you do, cause that's what your relationship was based on, was them getting their fucking ass kissed. So that's all they want.
Yeah.
And, but you gotta understand what it is and how the people operate and what they're doing. See the programs that they're running, understand what they are, and figure out how to interact with that in a very neutral way.
And you choose whether that's acceptable. Each person you walk in and you go like, do I want to work with that person or not?
Kind of, sort of. I mean, around here, I don't do it at all. I don't want to work with people around here. I have the certain people that I do work for and do some help for, and then if they recommend me to someone else, I'll talk to them, maybe see what's going on. But when I go into Denver, it's also a different crowd. It's a different mindset of people. When you go into this bar in Denver, I mean, I'm talking to a dude who has a landscape company that has 5 trucks, and we're gonna line up a fleet, account with this guy of servicing his trucks, fleet maintenance. So what I'm talking to them about is way different, because those motherfuckers are making money.
Yeah, and it's maintenance is cost of doing business, and yeah, you're in a conversation about let's make money together.
Yeah, that truck needs to be on the road making you money. I will come there and service that truck on these intervals or whatever, go over the whole thing, and that way you're going to know about what kind of condition it's in at a constant, because you can't ever trust the guys to do the look over on the truck. They're not gonna. They don't give a shit about that truck. That's why they're always beat up. But so getting a third party to come in, sign, at this many miles, we just go over this truck, and we do this, change its oil, give it all these, the 100 and whatever point inspection, and say these are the things that I'm starting to see wear on, and you're going to want to replace them on the next oil change or whatever.
So, I'm just going to jump back to the, just kind of recap. What would you want somebody to hear or to learn from your experience with the leukemia and your experience in the wilderness?
That was all for me.
What's the takeaway there?
I don't give a shit. They can learn whatever the fuck they want. That was all for me. That was all for me to deal with my life and to come out and want and live a peaceful life. That's all I learned.
I mean, I feel personally like there's so much there. There's so much that you learned personally and that you implemented in your life.
Yeah, but you can't teach that to somebody, dude. They got to go out there and experience themselves.
Yeah, but there's a lesson in that, right? That the path that you walked, like many people would receive that as a death sentence, and they would probably die. And in our culture, in our society, it's probably hard to find solutions at that point, right? You gotta look really hard to find some way to get through that.
I have a lot of fucking skills and ability, and when it comes down to it, and I need to learn something, I can pick up information real quick, and I can teach myself. And then when you're out there, you learn real fast, or you don't.
Well, I think your story's a testament to that. If I go back through the last, hour or so of us talking about that, there's probably 24 or more. Like, I can't really count the number of things that you've mentioned that were actually important for your healing that maybe outside of most people's experience.
Well, I mean, the first thing is prepare yourself to not exist anymore. And a lot of people got their heaven story and all this other shit and everything like that. And okay, that's whatever you got. I got the whatever, man. It's just over, and when you got that going, you're not running a program of some other religious belief system, and you're just, who knows?
You let go.
Yeah, you let go. I mean, there's no stress there then. Not having the stress and living out there stress-free and doing whatever the fuck I want and just living however was amazing for my health because you're not battling yourself constantly, you know? Mm-hmm. And, I think that was one of the biggest things is being stress free. I come back to the world, I get stressed out. Next thing you know, my immune system fucking crashes down and I'm sick again all the time.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you start getting wrapped up in other people's agendas as well. And they're
because I mean, one of the great things about being someone who can do all kinds of shit, people want to hire you and then they want you to manage people and then they want to give you all their stress. And here's all our stress, you know, and as a repair mechanic, I still got the same thing. People just hand me their problem and their stress and I'm supposed to fix it, you know? Mm-hmm. And after so long, I have to realize, man, I got to get the fuck away from people for a little while because that's all I do is I just deal with people's problems. That's my job. My car is broke down, you know, fix it.
But then you got to take care of you.
Yeah. And you know, you got to be careful of what person is putting that stress onto you, you know? And they need to make that your fucking problem a lot of times. A lot of people do that, you know, when they're overwhelmed and everything. I mean, we do. I get stressed out and I get short and then I'll start getting short with people and I'll start getting loud. And it's like, just get the fuck away from me. I can't deal with another person right now. I'm at my human contact limit. Okay. I just need to finish this and go, you know, because advertising on Craigslist, man, you don't always get people that hire you with money in their pocket. They're hiring you saying they do. And the next thing you know, you're into this job and you're like, how much money you got? You know, because they're giving off all the signs that they don't have the money. And it's like, well, and then, you know, right away it's you fucking bastards, you know, and now you wasted time on this job, you know, and you're not going to get paid. And it's just a hassle to do liens in the court process, which is what I'm going through on a boat right now with a couple of yahoos, you know. And it's like, yeah, you know, it's not illegal, it seems. You can't just bust them for theft, you know. There's hiring with ill intent, but good luck trying to get the prosecution on that.
Right.
You know, that has to be
theft of your time and energy.
Right.
But that's a lot less clear than theft of property.
Yeah.
You know?
And like me, I don't have a shop, so I can't just lock their car up. Mm-hmm. And I can't disable the car. Mm-hmm. That's vandalism. Mm-hmm. So it's a bitch. You know, but now I've changed my ad and it says, if you're broke, don't fucking call me. YouTube is free. And if you want me to talk you through your job, YouTube is free. I'm not. And I put my rates out there. And boy, it slowed the phone calls down, but the ones I get are money in the bank. You know, I'm not bothered by 10 broke motherfuckers now trying to get me to tell them how to fix their car over the damn phone because they ain't got no money. Mm-hmm. Or trying to get me to give them a deal because they ain't got no money, or they're just being cheap or whatever. They're just vampires, you know? And I said, no. Someone else can fuck with your shit. I'm not.
Sometimes it's weird to encounter ads like that, but I do get that. Like if it's actually effective at getting a better clientele your way, like if it works, keep doing it.
It worked, you know, and so I've developed a pretty good clientele off of just changing my ad like that.
So what do you want to say in closing? What do you want to leave people with?
I don't give a fuck. Whatever.
Is that a summary of life?
Yeah, just fucking whatever. I mean, everybody's going to do whatever the fuck they want no matter what, you know. I mean, if they think, oh, I want to go and whatever. I mean, it's interesting to them for 2 fucking minutes until all of a sudden they realize they got their car payment and they got this and they got all that. And, you know, it's like, well, those are your ties to the world, dude. You haven't let go of everything yet. I let go of everything. I walked away from money and all the whole world and everything, and I just sat out there by myself. And I was insignificant. And I still carry insignificance with me. I just do things, you know, and people can choose to grant you significance. Trust me. I've been around this valley and said, I can do this. And then had the guys like, no, you can't. I'm like, yeah, I can. I got like a career of doing this, you know, and I have references. I have an actual old business page showing all the shit I did. And the guy's like, no, I did these. I'm like, you're a fucking weirdo, man. What the fuck are you doing? But yeah, it's just they'll tell you who they want you to be depending on how you come into their life, you know. You come in some mountain man out of the woods with a crazy ass fucking story talking about I can build a fucking house, I can fix that roof, and I can do this shit. They're not buying that. They're just trying to use you. The only reason you're there is because you're in a low spot in your life, and these motherfuckers are going to try and take advantage of that. and that's it. I did have some good people.
So much is based off of appearances, right? Like if you show up and you've had a clean shower and you got clean clothes on, you're having a completely different conversation with them.
People don't fucking recognize me when I look like this right now. They don't even know who I am. I mean, because they usually just see me all dirty and whatever, in my bib overalls and my working gear, and I'm a complete mess. And then I get cleaned up, and people are like, "Damn." They don't even know. So it's I'm not really got nothing to say to anybody about it, because they're just going to take and do whatever they want with it. I mean, if the calling's happening, it's up to them. I don't give a shit what they do with it. I know what I did, and I know what it did in my life, and I know what it did for my life.
With that, thank you, Jon. Really appreciate you coming on, and been looking forward to this for a while, and just really looking forward to getting this out there.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, dude. Yep.